We're on the record. Commissioner Chris Nahat, Chairperson Maria Martinez called in and likely that she will not be attending today's meeting. Today is August 27, 2020. This is a San Miguel County Board of County Commissioners will hold a special meeting on Thursday, August 27, 2020, beginning at 9 a.m. at the San Miguel County Administration Complex located at 500 West National Avenue, Suite 200, Las Vegas, New Mexico. Notice to people with disabilities: if you're an individual with a disability or in need of a reader, amplifier, qualified sign language interpreter, or any form of auxiliary aid or service to attend or participate in these hearings or meetings, please contact the San Miguel Manager's Office at 505-425-9333 at least 1 week prior to the meeting or as soon as possible. Public documents, including the agenda and minutes, can be provided in various accessible formats. Please contact the Commission Administrator at either of the above numbers if a summary or any other type of accessible format is needed. At least 72 hours in advance of the meeting, the following agenda for today's meeting was posted and available for public inspection at the San Miguel County website at www.co.sanmiguel.nm.us and also available in hard copy at the office of the San Miguel County Manager. Call to order, please. Roll call.
Madam Chair Maria Martinez. Vice Chair Chris Nahat.
Here.
Commissioner Harold Garcia.
Here.
Commissioner Janice Varela.
Presente.
Commissioner Max Trujillo.
Here. Thank you. At this time, I would like to ask Commissioner Garcia to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I salute the flag of the state of New Mexico and the symbol of perfect friendship amongst united cultures. At this time, ask for a motion to approve today's agenda.
So move, Mr. Chair.
Moved by Commissioner Garcia, second by Commissioner Trujillo. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Under new business, discussion and approval of the 2021 legislative priorities for the legislative session and complete the final rank of the San Miguel County Infrastructure Capital Improvement Plan, known for this meeting today as the ICIP. Background information: the San Miguel County will submit 2022 and 2026 ICIP to the Department of Finance and Administration. The purpose of the meeting is to discuss legislative priorities to ensure that all projects requested via capital outlay request reside at the ICIP and the ICIP is ranked. Mr. Archuleta, presenting.
Good morning, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the Commission, elected officials, and everyone else in attendance. Thank you for allowing me to speak today regarding the ICIP. So before we move into the ranking of the infrastructure capital improvement plan, I just want to give everyone an update before we're at the ICIP. So the first thing is I just want to remind the Commission that the ICIP is a working document. So it can be changed. Commissioner Garcia and I were talking this morning about how the ICIP is kind of an ongoing process, probably starting around, well, actually right after the legislative session, and then it continues moving forward all the way to September, more or less. We still have 20 days to make changes in the ICIP if we need to. We're ahead of the curve. It's not due until the 19th. And what makes this process a little bit easier is we already have an approved resolution to DFA. So we're doing pretty good. You have before you a list, which looks like this, which is the project summary of all the projects within the ICIP. So it's approximately 4 pages, and it lists all the projects within the ICIP. So this is the list that's directly from it starts off on the top left where it has the project ID. So the project ID is the ID that signifies the project, and that ends up being a capital outlay request. It will connect. If you're going to do a capital outlay request, that number goes with the capital outlay request. And then it has the years, so we're always a fiscal year ahead on the ICIP. So right now we're in state fiscal year 2021, but the ICIP is always 1 year ahead of that. So we're in fiscal year 2022 to 2026. So it's a 5-year plan. And then it goes on to the rank and project title. So the ICIP right now is not ranked in any particular order that I wanted it to be, or County Manager Dr. Martinez or any staff. It's just listed that way. It can be moved around at any time. It can be moved around this meeting, and obviously that's probably something that we're going to talk about. But just to go over a couple of the changes that we discussed in the last commission meeting. So I did move the commission district roads up for now in the ICIP. I did remove any wording regarding subdivision in the Country Acres project. There was some concerns from DFA last year that the word subdivision may have impacted the scoring regarding that CDBG project. So I worked with DFA to remove that language. So hopefully it'll strengthen that application to DFA. If you look on page 3, towards the bottom, project number 38 and down, I did add the Sheriff's Department lapel and cameras. That is going to be a mandate for the Sheriff's Department, so that they have to start wearing lapels. So I did add that in. I did meet with Geraldine and her staff regarding the county clerk's storage facility. County clerk's is in need of a facility that is dust-free for the voting machines, a place where they can calibrate the machines and work on them in an environment that's conducive to their needs. I also met with Connie and we discussed their needs for data and pictometry so that they can properly do their assessments in the assessor's office. And then I also met with Sheriff again regarding the addition to the building that they want to add. There were no comments from the Treasurer's Department. I'm not sure they don't need any projects at this time, and probate does not need any projects at this time. So I did cover all those additions that Mr. Vice Chair, you requested in the last meeting. I did move on the last page some of the projects that we already have funded, which were project 43, 44, and 45. Those are the architectural barriers, the 88 capital outlay that we got this year, and the emergency vehicles and the public communication system. They will remain on the ICIP until those projects are completed. I just sent those project agreements to DFA, and they should be signed hopefully in the next week or so, and then we'll receive those agreements and we can get started on those projects as well. So with that, Mr. Vice Chair, I'll stand for any questions regarding last meeting or any other questions of where we're at so far.
Mr. Chuleta, the total award of the project is $750,000, is that correct?
For which project, Mr. Chair?
Country, okay, that was the amount. To acknowledge incoming Commissioner Kenneth Medina just entered in the room. Welcome, Commissioner Medina.
Morning.
Good morning. Mr. Chair, if I may, I'd like to make just a suggestion. You know, we've been to the legislature the past 2 years, and every time we go, we're asked about the ICIP and where our projects stand on the ICIP. I know that there's constituents that will call and make their own requests, and of course the legislators listen to their requests as well. So before we adopt the priority list on the ICIP, I would want, and it's just a suggestion, it doesn't have to be done that way. I would want for us to set our legislative agenda for this coming year, and then based on that, then we could set our ICIP based on our legislative agenda. I know that there's elected officials here, for example, our clerk, our assessor, and our sheriff that have requests in the ICIP. Our treasurer is here also, and I think she may have some requests that we may want to add today. And so, and then we have Public Works. Of course, Public Works has an abundance of requests. So I would like for us to, and it's, like I say, it's just a suggestion. I would like for us to go over the legislative priorities. And then after we've done that, then we set those based on, we set our ICIP based on that. And I think it'll add strength to us when we go to the legislature and we say, well, you know what, here are our 15 whatever requests. And by then, maybe we could have, maybe not the top 15 ICIP, but maybe the top 30, you know what I'm saying?
Excuse me, yeah, I'm following what you're saying, Commissioner Garcia, excuse me. And
Varela.
yes, thank you so much, Mr. Chair. I've done a lot of ICIPs when I worked for the ASECIA Association and for several ASECIAs, and they're special governmental entities. So counties, of course, are a different deal, a lot more projects and so on. But the ICIP is the plan for your legislative capital outlay. So I think it's the other way around. And you do have, they are coordinated, and we do need to be better prepared for the legislature with packets, with our projects. I think that I follow that. But as far as a plan, as far as, and help me along here, Mr. Archuleta, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the ICIP is a plan, like you said, and it's going to evolve and change, and we can add projects even as a legislature after the 20th of September, when this is due. We can still add projects to that. Am I right?
Mr. Vice Chair, Commissioner Varela, yes, that's correct. You can add a capital outlay project prior to the last day, which is usually the last day to drop a bill.
Right.
So what happens typically is the person that's requesting the capital outlay will contact the person that's managing the ICIP, and then they have to contact DFA, get permission to add a project. And then they build a project, send it off to DFA. DFA returns with a yes or no, and then we fill out the form, and then you go find a legislative sponsor.
Thank you. Is there a process on our end as commissioners? Do we need to approve that once it's in there, or does that just go through the ICIP staff person, which is you for the county?
Commissioner Varela, once the ICIP is turned in on September 19th, what will happen there is they'll use about a month at DFA to review all the ICIPs throughout the state. Then they'll come back with a certain amount of changes that we may or may not have, and then they will go to publication. Once the ICIP goes to publication, then at that time, it's a done deal. And then later on, near the legislative session, if somebody wants to add one, that's where that process that I just described begins.
And then it would go to the commission to add that project, or?
No, not necessarily. No,
Okay.
not necessarily.
Thank you for that clarification. So anyway, if, I don't know how far we'll get, but if we could get those priorities on here, then the capital outlay kind of follows this. So our capital outlay requests would follow the priorities here. And if we, top 5 is what you're supposed to do, when you do your priorities for the ICIP, the top 5 are the ones that you put on all the detail, and the other one's not as much detail as you're listing your projects from what I remember. So, I mean, this ICIP list is going to be changing and flexible. And so I just had a couple of other questions too. So anyway, as far as that goes, I agree we need to get better prepared for the legislature, but I kind of see that this is where we start, and then the capital outlay requests and preparing for that comes from this, rather than the other. They kind of go together.
What we will do, if there's no objection, is that that's why we have the elected officials and the department heads here, is to present what their need, And that's an excellent idea, Commissioner Garcia, that we'll go ahead and listen to the needs of the elected officials for their respective departments, and then we'll make a decision based on that.
Chairman, can I just ask a couple more questions and then we can move
Yes,
on,
go
I'll be
ahead.
short? Okay, I saw that also on the road projects, if do we know if there's gonna be local government road funds or other funding available too besides the legislative capital outlay, which may or may not be there? For some of the paved roads and some of the road projects?
Commissioner Ferreira, so from what we're hearing from DOT is it's looking still somewhat good, but we don't have anything concrete. And Gerald second that now, but we're just kind of waiting to see what funding's gonna look like, but nothing concrete at this point.
Yeah, I understand, it's kind of that time, but thank you, I just thought I'd ask. And one more question, I saw on here the emergency vehicles for sheriff. Are we considering other emergency vehicles for fire and ambulance for other safety? Are they on this list?
Fire's on there.
Fire's on it? Okay. And I don't know if we need, we're still dealing with the ambulance for my district or Pecos, but I don't know if there's a need for any other funding for that ambulance or others, so maybe we can consider that or discuss it. And that's all I have, Mr. Chair, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Trujillo, comments? All right, having said that, we'll go ahead and listen to our elected officials and their respective needs that they'll come up, starting over here with the assessor's office, Ms. Gallegos.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I handed an example to Commissioner Max Trujillo. What it is it's a database that we would like to purchase. What it'll do is it's similar to Google Earth, but it's more expanded. Right now, the assessor's office, we have quite a bit of a turnaround in appraisers because they don't pass the classes for one. They need to take classes. And so to get out in the field, we have to get out in the field, and we're having a lot of trouble getting into properties. We have a lot of taxpayers that own property here, but they don't live here. We can't get into their properties. They're locked up. They live out of the state. And then we have some that don't let us in. Okay, so Pictometry, which is what I passed down to you, is similar to Google Earth, but it's more intense. You can actually go into the property, I mean, all the way down to the ground. You can see as much as a calf. You can see the corner of where the building starts. You can see the north side, the east side, the west side, every side of it. By purchasing this, we don't have to go into the property at all times. Yes, there will be times that we still have to go and do a visit, okay? But the thing is that this would help us. It would help us a great deal. Right now with the COVID, my staff hasn't been able to get out there. We've got 174 protests. Out of those 174 protests, one is in the hands of the county attorney right now. This gentleman refused to let my staff go in. He made them park outside. He made them park outside of his property. He only took him up to the point where he wanted them to see. He didn't let them take pictures of the structures. As they were walking, after my staff had parked the truck and went into his property, he moved and showed him his gun. He was carrying a gun, and he said he had to carry that. My boys, my appraisers, they were very uncomfortable during their visit. He didn't let them take pictures of the structure. He told them they could only take pictures of the bottom, the base. You know, we don't need that. We need the whole thing. We need every corner, every inch to be able to have a good appraisal. Okay, we see that if we can purchase this program, we could probably bring in quite a bit of revenue. There's a lot out there that we don't have access to. There's a lot out there. There's a lot of closed properties that, you know, it was brought to my attention that there's some people that are building cabins. They're building cabins and we don't have access to that property. Somebody brought me a map the other day and they told me, look, this is what you need to go see. And they're not going to let you in. This would help us. This would help us tremendously because if we can't get in, we can see it from the sky. We can measure it from the sky. We could see what it's built out of from the sky. Another thing is we have a lot of cattle out there as well. People are reporting 2 cows on 300 acres. They're reporting 1 cow and 1 bull on 700 acres. If we can go down as low as the ground to start measuring that cabin, that mansion that's being built out there, we can count the cows. We can count the cows. We've got cows, we've got animals out there that aren't being rendered. They're rendering 2 animals. But yet, you cruise, you go up different locations of the county, and you see lots of animals, lots of them.
Commissioner Nahar,
Commissioner Trujillo?
Assessor Gallegos,
Yes.
does that program have the capacity to actually measure structure?
Yes, it does.
It does?
Yes, it does.
And you feel comfortable with the accuracy of it?
Yes, it does. We saw it, Diego brought it to last year. And Brian, he's the one I've been talking with. He brought it here to the chambers and he showed it to us. He zoomed in, you know, the way it zoomed, you can zoom in from your desk and you can measure it. And like I said, you know, if you see it, it's Google Earth. You can't do that with Google Earth. You cannot measure, you cannot, you know, you have a house, let's say you have a house and you have an attached garage and you have an added deck, it will measure that deck for you. You can go in and measure it. You can measure the width of it, you can measure the depth of it, you can do the garage, the connection to the garage. There's several counties that are using it. Taos and Bernalillo County have it. I've communicated with Taos County, and they've been able to they've been using it now for a few years, and they did theirs in sections, where when they purchased the first one, they did a certain section of the county, and what they brought in with that, they were able to move on to the next and to the next. So we feel that if we can start with this and do the most populated area, we can move from there. The most populated area, of course, would be the west part of San Miguel County. It would cover Las Vegas, the Rociada area, Pecos, and then move on out into Conchas.
Ms. Gallegos, the total cost is $208,537. Is that the total cost, or is that because I noticed that the annual payment would be $104,268?
That's for the second flight. That would be the total for the second flight.
Okay.
Each flight is
So,
separate.
but the total price would be $288,000?
We were figuring it'd be close to $1 million.
Okay,
Yeah, to do the whole county for each flight.
okay.
Mr. Chair, Assessor Gallegos, I believe we built the project in phases. So because of the vast size of the county, the assessor's office would start in one section of the county and then move on.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So as
It's sectional.
yes, and if this project was funded and they were able to purchase the software hypothetically, then at that time, through the revenues of the assessments, they could generate more funding for the project. Is that correct, Assessor?
Yes, yes. When Brian Garcia came in to do the presentation, he said that like in San Miguel County, he would really, really highly recommend that our flights would be done in the fall, close to winter, He said when the leaves fall off the tree, because we've got the trees, because we have a lot of wooded areas, and spring would not be good for this side of the county. He didn't, I don't recall if he recommended just one flight per year or just the one flight, but he did recommend that we do it in the fall. And also, like I said earlier, this would really help us. How he explained it during the presentation, he said that Bernalillo County, the sheriff's office was able to use it as well when they discovered those empty graves in the West Mesa, not empty graves, but all those graves in the West Mesa, that they were able to use it, that's how well this program works. That they were able to use it because of the forming and the movement of the ground. It went so close to the ground that they were able to discover the graves through it. So, to me, that sold me. That sold me there, because I thought, wow, you can see the grains of dirt, the dirt turned, you can't see that in Google Earth. You can't see that, the intensity of it. But right now, like I said, we have an account, a parcel of land that our appraisers weren't able to get into. And right now, it's in the hands of the county attorney, because we can't go in to properly assess it. And this would help us. This would help us to go in and see what's in that property. What kind of structures is there that this taxpayer doesn't want us to see? This would help us. This would help us in situations as that.
Mr. Chairman? I have a
Commissioner
question.
Varela.
I have a question about the total cost is 1.1 million phased over time. Does that mean county will purchase the software and own it? Will the county be paying that amount per year towards the purchase of 1.1 million, or how does that payment work out to Eagle View, for the company who's going to provide the software?
That would be for 4 years for the company, what we would purchase from the company.
So it's an agreement with them over 4 years, you don't have to pay it upfront for the $1 million, you can pay?
No, it would be
this
paid in
amount each?
payments.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it would be paid for every flight.
Oh, yeah,
For
I don't know
every
what you
flight.
mentioned, flight, is that like a time? Or
The
flying like
The flight
airplane?
is the airplane.
Oh, okay.
They go over the whole
So
county.
that's how they charge?
Yes,
Okay, this
yes.
sounds like great technology, and I'm
Yes.
sure it'll be really helpful, and even identifying places where there are houses, the small houses, tiny
Yes.
houses that are popping up everywhere, and other.
There's a lot out there. We get a lot of reports, and we don't have access to get to them, because like I said earlier,
People
a lot
walk
of
the
people
gates.
live out of town, and they only come in at a certain time of the year. There's one that we have up in Gainas, and due to her health, she only comes in for 1 month out of the year in the summer. And the thing is that, she, because of her health, it's going to have to be done on her time. That's how she explained it, so now we have to wait till next year that she comes back, so, things like that we shouldn't have to wait. We should be able to pick them up as they come in, but we have to wait. So, and with this, we wouldn't have to wait. As it comes in, we can start producing it and working it out.
Save a lot of
And I believe it would save a lot of time, because our appraisers wouldn't have to be out there, because they travel far. They go into high mountain. Conchas, when they go to Conchas, they have to plan the whole day out there.
And is this a tool that will help the assessor, not replace them with the machine?
No, because they still have to do
They
the
still have- they still need
calculations.
people.
Yeah, we still need the calculators, so yeah, we still need
bodies.
the
Oh,
people.
good.
Yes, we do.
Thank you very much.
At that point, we might even have to get another appraiser or two, depending on how it works.
Oh, yeah, because you'll have to interpret the data and record it and everything?
Yes, yeah,
Excellent.
because there's a lot of calculations. If this can create speed in finding things, then we might need manpower to calculate. But that would be in the future, But I truly believe, I wish that Brian would have been able to come back down, because he did tell me, he says, I can go down and do a presentation. He says, as soon as COVID is over. to present it to the commissioners. He says, to your manager, he said. And I told him, well, let's see how COVID is, but at this point, we can't do that. But it was very, very nice presentation. And like I said, there are several counties that are using it, and it's worked out very well for them. I know Taos County ended up purchasing a new one to be able to do the ski valley. I believe it was last year, because they hadn't done the ski valley yet. So.
Any other questions for Ms. Gallego? Attorney? Thank you, Ms. Gallego.
Okay, thank you.
Up next, our county clerk, Mrs. Gutierrez.
Good morning,
Good morning.
Mr. Vice Chairman and members of the board, Dr. Martinez, Mr. Archuleta. Well, my request is a storage building for all my tabulators. I just received, I requested new tabulators, and my request was met by the Secretary of State. And I have over 40 new tabulators that I need to protect and make sure that mice don't get into them, and the area that I store my tabulators is dust-free. And another thing, I need a building where my techs will have enough room to maneuver all the tabulators to program them. If one day this tabulators fail and I have a big election, I am going to tell you, we are going to hit the news. And that's my major worry in every election. Because I don't care how much rat poison we put in those storages, there's still mice. There's still dust. And I agree, that's not the greatest place to store voting machines, like Mr. Garcia pointed out. And that wasn't my doing. But I guess I have to do with what I have right now. But I really need a place where it is dust-free, mice-free, and a place that my techs can maneuver all those machines. And I guess, you know, everybody's project is very important, as mine is. But I am requesting that. And like Mr. Archuleta pointed out, it probably will be done in phases, but I really don't care how it's done, but as long as it gets done. Anybody have any questions?
Commissioner Nahar.
Yes, Commissioner Trujillo.
County Clerk Gutierrez, do you, and maybe Gerald can answer this question, is there a place in the county that with, minimal investment, we can seal off a section large enough to house these tabulators clean and safe? Do you have an idea of how big the area should be?
It needs to be pretty big, Commissioner Trujillo, because what happens is when my voting machine technicians, they spread them all out, and they're programming machines, and if they need quite a bit of, Arnold, Mr. Lopez suggested that we build something over whatever the warehouse right now, but I don't think that would be feasible because it would make my space smaller.
How large is a tabulator?
A tabulator? The machine, the tabulators, the ones that you actually insert your ballot when you
Oh,
vote.
okay.
And those are by tabulators.
Okay.
So they're, maybe a little smaller than this, a little. But, yeah, I need quite a bit of space. They suggested that old portable building, but that needs a heck of a lot of work. Mr. Lopez gave us a tour of it and it was like, it's in pretty bad shape, right, Mr. Lopez? Yes.
Commissioners, I'd like to make some comments in regards to that. So these machines have to be stored in a environment that's temperature controlled, both heated and cooled. So that makes it a little bit more difficult as to what facility would be appropriate. We have the most appropriate facility right now. Unfortunately, we have it leased out to the wood business, no? But the casket factory portion would be really the most awesome place for that. It's big enough and it's heated and it's controlled, it's a nice environment in there. It's away from the dust from the crusher, but unfortunately we currently have it leased out. But everything that we have right now, our facility in the shop area where they're currently housed at, we get a lot of dust from the crusher. The doors, they're not sealed proper, they're just a garage door. It doesn't have the proper sealing to it. My first thought was to build within inside of it, partition it off and make it dust proof and mice proof, and that was my first thought. But like Geraldine said, they need additional space.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Garcia.
I'm glad that we're having this meeting today because it gives us time from now to January when the legislative session starts to prepare our packages the way that they should be prepared. Our clerk has a valid request, our assessor has a valid request, and I know that the other elected officials are gonna have a valid request also. It gives us time. I know that, we approved the budget a few weeks ago, and if I'm not mistaken, I think we have about $450,000 for buildings. We set aside, I think, 150 from the general fund, and then we have an additional 225,000 coming from the legislature, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Martinez.
Vice Chair Nahad and members of the commission, we allocated approximately 175,000
Okay.
for building construction.
So then, if I'm not mistaken, we're right at $450,000. And that's money that's been approved for buildings. So what I think we should do in the case of Ms. Gutierrez, we have the power to hire a consultant that's gonna look at her needs. And those consultants are professionals and they can come and say, you know what, you need to foam fill your walls. That's gonna seal those walls completely. You need to do a temperature control room that you keep a certain temperature all year round because that's important.
That's correct.
And then it'll be as dust proof as we can have it designed. Of course, you're gonna have to have staff in there regularly making sure that it's in that manner, but that's what staff are for. And so I would hope that from now to January, I would like for us to give direction to our county manager to hire a consultant that's gonna work with Ms. Gutierrez and say, okay, well, this is what we need. Work with our assessor and not necessarily hire someone to work with her, but she's got someone that's already a professional that's doing that, and have them come on board with us and have them prepare us a proposal that's gonna be a professional proposal with numbers, with actual numbers. And, we have the time. We have from now until January the 1st to get it done. So that's why I requested that we have this meeting today. So that we can go in prepared. The same thing with roads. We have engineers that if we, let's say, I prioritize one road in my district, well, I want that package to reflect exactly what that road needs. I don't want to be hypothetically saying, well, it could use a culvert here, it could use, I want a professional to come in and tell us, okay, this is what you need for that particular project. And there's professionals that do that. And so that's what I want us to do, Mr. Chairman.
Perhaps what we can do is for for a commission meeting in September, that we could do an RFP to put that out for proposal for consultant for review of the building. That way we can exactly, and I agree with that, we can get a cost estimate as to what exactly we're going to ask for. And that's going to be the most important thing. How much is it going to cost? That way we can request those monies. Okay, thank you, Ms. Gutierrez.
Well, thank you.
Thank
I
you for
appreciate
Any other
it.
questions for Ms. Gutierrez?
Oh, any
Commissioner
questions?
Varela?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Ms. Gutierrez. Thank you for what you're doing. I know there's a lot of pressure on your office to perform, and now under COVID with all the challenges, and I want to thank you so much. And I'm looking forward to hearing you present at the next meeting on the election and the general election and what's planned with the absentee ballots and so on. But I really support this, and it's really critical. And however we can support you to get this moving, the sooner the better. We're all behind you, so.
Thank you,
I agree
Commissioner. I
completely with
appreciate
what
it.
the other commissioners said here, and look forward to seeing that in September on the agenda to move forward and get you covered there, get our machines
right.
taken care of. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Vice Chair, members of the commission, Ms. Geraldine, you have a total of 800,000.
Uh-huh.
Would that be sufficient? I would think that we should increase that, but, and I know Arnold's here, and what are your thoughts on that?
I am thinking that maybe for now, maybe that would be, or maybe we can increase it, but what do you think? Because you have an area, right?
Yes, well, I think what's going to reflect the cost of this is, of course, the facility, the location. If it's something that we own and we already have erected, your cost is going to be a lot lower as opposed to creating a new facility. I think with a consultant and visiting with you and coming up with a plan will determine which route you're going to go. Do we currently have a facility that will house it? If we could modify where you're at now, I don't know if you have other stuff that you store there that possibly could be stored in a portable that was reconstructed or rebuilt or whatever, and you could store maybe some other items.
Not necessarily.
No.
It has to be stored all together. Yeah.
A suggestion might be, might be building on the property that we own on West National, which is being used as a parking lot that's close enough to the courthouse to where the clerk's office can have access to it, easy access to it. That's a
Yeah, so
possibility.
if we're looking at building a new facility, then it would take every bit of that 800,000. I would suggest by the time you take and create heating and cooling and, getting your electricity out there and all that and doing a big new building complete, it's going to be up there in the hundreds of thousands, so.
And Mr. Archuleta and I went over it, and he explained, can you tell us more or less the specifics that would have entail in building a new building, Mr. Archuleta? I really appreciate it.
Yes, Mr. Vice Chair and Geraldine, we did meet and we discussed, well, first of all, let me backtrack and clarify the legislative language. So the legislative language says to plan, design, construct, furnish, and equip a voting machine storage facility. So that language right there covers whether or not the county decides to do from the ground up or renovate an existing building. So that legislative language on the request for capital outlay would cover that. In terms of a new building, you're going to need, of course, all the bells and whistles in that building. ADA compliance, restrooms, you're going to need electrical, plumbing, the proper filtration system for that temperature controlled. So that's going to increase the costs for a building from the ground up. Now, I think it's really important to recommend a plan and design. That way they can at least provide Geraldine with the proper cost estimates of what it would cost to build from the ground up or renovate an existing building in the park where Public Works is at. So I think there's probably a lot more cost than 800,000 if in fact you go from the ground up. If you have an existing building that has the proper square footage and you can renovate it, and then I think 800,000 to 9 may cover it, but I think that's best left to an architect to determine those costs. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chuleta.
Any other questions, concerns from County Clerk, Ms. Gutierrez? Thank you, Mr. Gutierrez.
Thank you.
One other comment,
Okay, sure.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Trujillo.
So, do you have like a size of space that you are gonna need? Is it 1,000 square feet? Is it, you know,
We,
1,500, 2,000 square feet?
we went on, what did we decide on that, Mr. Chuleta, when we went over it? We didn't, did we go over the square footage? The only thing I know is that it needs to be, maybe at least 2,000 square feet building, because we need, like I tell you, enough space to program our machines. And I'm gonna get additional machines, and they're coming pretty soon, so, I mean,
Mr. Vice Chair, Commissioner Trujillo, I think our discussion was around approximately 5,000 square feet.
oh, maybe
5,000.
Okay,
5,000.
I just have one more question, Mr. Chair, and Ms. Gutierrez and Mr.
Commissioner
Archuleta.
Varela.
Is there something that we can do right now? A Band-Aid approach, kind of, because by the time we get the funding and the building and everything, you have these new machines there, new machines coming. And I know you're doing the best you can, so what can we do or the county do? Is there anything to help to support you for the meantime to secure the machines?
right now, what they're doing is, Dr. Martinez is making sure the pest control is making sure that he's having the poison put in, and making sure. What I did is I bought canvas, those tarps to cover the machines, but still it's not quite enough. I'm not protecting it from the mice. As you know, mice will get in everywhere and chew electronic devices, and that is what I'm very, very, very
And put
afraid
some
of.
cats to work, throw some cats in there at night.
I'm gonna have to, and then we'll have
They don't have cats
somebody
to
from
do it.
Arnold to go feed
And
them.
you have to buy cat food, you have to buy cat food.
Thank you, I know it's not very
Yes,
difficult.
yes, yes. Any other questions, members of the board? No? Thank you, appreciate
you.
it.
Up next is our County Treasurer, Berta Bustamante.
Good morning, everyone. It's
Good
good to
morning.
see all of you. I really didn't submit anything for the ICIP because we actually, well, the treasurer's office, we have an incoming treasurer, as you know, and she was wanting to just modify the treasurer's office, putting up glass shields to protect us from individuals that come into the office with this COVID thing that came up on us, and we had to do what we could to protect ourselves and the customers too. The only thing is that we budgeted, asked for $50,000 in our budget so that we could remodify the office whenever we can. That's the only thing that we're needing right now. And that was budgeted into the treasurer's.
Any idea as to the cost that would be involved?
You know what, honestly, Jennifer is looking into it, because it'll probably be done when she's county treasurer. So, but she has turned all the paperwork to Andrew Duran. I think she was advised to do that. And so she is in charge of that project that's gonna happen. I only have a few months left, so I'm good.
Vice Chair Nahad, members of the commission, we did submit our CARES Act application, and within that application is funding for the treasurer's office and also the clerk's office to have to install a protective barrier on both departments. So hopefully in a week, we will hear from DFA if we did receive the funding.
Any questions
So that was it
for our
for
treasurer?
us.
Any
Any
questions?
questions?
Thank you, Ms. Bustamante.
You're
Thank you.
welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Up next is our County Sheriff, Chris Lopez.
Vice Chair, Commissioners, I first start by saying thank you for providing us this opportunity to let you know what we're looking at as far as legislative funding. And I'll start by handing out some data that I put together for you guys to look at while I give my presentation.
Thank you.
So if you look at the proposed infrastructure capital improvement plan that was put together by Mr. Archuleta, you'll notice my items as items 38 and 41. So I'll give you we'll start with 38, which is our lapel cameras and data storage. So as you all know, in the last special session that we had a Senate Bill 8, which was reference to lapel cameras for law enforcement and the requirement for us to utilize them during any interaction with the public. Of course, that passed, and it's an unfunded mandate. So currently, we do have lapel cameras, but what we're looking for is to obtain cameras that will work with the system that we're looking at purchasing. If you look at, I believe it's page 3, it's a cost analysis of what we're looking at. So for the data storage, we're looking at $18,500, and then we're looking at $9,500 or $9,540 for the camera equipment that we can utilize with that data storage. So in total, we're looking at close to $30,000. It would cost us to obtain that system. And the reason being that it's important to obtain that system is because now we're required to store that data for 120 days. So each officer in interaction with the public is going to have to save those recordings for 120 days. So every day, each and every day that they interact with the public, you start looking at data storage, and that's quite a bit of storage. So we worked with Diego on obtaining those costs for data storage, which you'll see in there as well. And it's rather significant for a smaller agency. If you also look at the last part of the packet, I also added the fiscal impact report in there from the legislature, and that gives a good description of what we're looking at and what the impact is going to be on the county and also on the sheriff's office. And that's also where we got the cost for the actual cameras that state police uses, which are the most probably some of the better equipment that's out there right now. And just to give you a little bit of an update on that, one of the reasons why that's important is because with that system, we're able, it helps us to go through through those recordings and identify what we need in terms of IPRA, because as you all know, IPRA has been a huge problem for us and keeping up with it. One thing that I had also added in there, and we actually, Association of Counties was also asking for these costs as well, because I know that they're going to be going to the legislature and trying to look at obtaining some kind of funding, or maybe getting some of the language in the bill changed to help us with that. I also worked with the governor's office, and they had assured me that now coming in January with this session, that they would look at the bill and maybe address or make some corrections or changes in what they put out already to kind of help us with that as well. But in terms of IPRA, I had an estimated cost of about $20,000, maybe a part-time position, because I know there at the sheriff's office, myself and the undersheriff have been getting inundated with IPRA requests, and I know that Eileen in her office has also been having a lot of problems keeping up with IPRA requests. So, I try to look at everything, and I know we typically or we don't ask for funding for personnel, but what I did provide in there was all the information you needed to review in terms of what we're looking at and what we're going to be asking the legislature for to help us be compliant with Senate Bill 8. I'll stand for questions.
Question, Mr. Garcia.
I agree that we have to do the Pell issue, because that's been a state mandate that is being placed on us, and so that's pretty much a no-brainer as far as whether we add that to our list or not. The building, I've had the opportunity to visit with the sheriff at his office, and I know that, part of my background is in design, and I know that there's state guidelines, there's federal guidelines that, in commercial buildings, which the sheriff sits in a commercial building, you have to have so much square footage per person, per occupant in a building. And, the occupancy square footage in that building probably does not meet the standards for the amount of staff that the sheriff has. And, it's a very, very small space. I don't think the sheriff has any privacy whatsoever, and you know that an elected official and a manager of any sort always has to have some kind of privacy, because they're always having to deal with personnel issues. The sheriff is always having to deal with IPRA requests, as he's noted. And so I can see the need for expanding the facility that the sheriff is wanting us to support. And so I just want to let you know, Sheriff, that you have my support on that.
Thank you. And I could touch on that as well. So in the second priority that I'm going to be working for at the legislature this year is building addition. And, since I came into office, I know I had some pretty tall goals, and getting the department up to a reasonable standard that I felt is a reasonable standard, and also getting a competitive pay, getting more personnel, which we've been working with the county and with the manager on. With that, and something that I hadn't realized is just how inadequate the space is at the sheriff's office, and I know all you commissioners have been in there. It's very small, and with the staff that we do have, it's pretty inadequate. And I can say, with my big plans, and hopefully we can get there at some point, but with more personnel, it's definitely going to be very small. I know in working on my ICIP plan for this, I know that Robert's worked very closely with me in putting this project description together. And initially if you look at it, we had looked at a couple of different phases, and that was like the planning and design phase, and then you see implementation 2 and implementation 3. With that being said, I started doing some homework and discovered that Kevin Balkier had already done planning and design for the training room area which was never completed. So that's probably going to be the priority that I start off with. He quoted us at about 180,000. I was going to request 200,000 for that. So the planning and design is done for that already. And I think that's really important because in terms of training, I mean, we're constantly having to go and borrow space either at the police department or at West. We've even went to Mora to train. So really, that would really open up the opportunity for us to conduct our own trainings. And I know the undersheriff's been working on trying to get our staff all instructor certified in something so we can provide training to other agencies in the county and maybe even it would help us bring in some income as well. So that's a big deal for us, and I feel like that, you know, our office space, for those of you that have been in the office, is pretty inadequate. It's basically a closet, and I typically don't have professional meetings there. I'll usually go have them somewhere out in the community or here at the county, and so, you know, but that can wait. I think right now the more important thing for me is to get that training room completed, and I know that was part of I believe Sheriff Gold's time when he worked on all of that, and I actually didn't even know that existed. Commissioner Garcia was the one that pointed out that he believed that something was already done. So when I did start looking into it, it was completed. So that's a huge jump for us, and I think that's something, especially this year with the legislature and the funding crunch that it's in, that's something that I may be able to push. As you all know, I wanted to add that I'm very excited that we're doing this because I know in the last couple sessions we haven't went in there with a strong plan, and we've had to make a lot of last-minute adjustments and additions or changes, and I think going in there with the plan and as a county, I think we'll be more successful, especially in a time now where money is an issue. So I'll stand for questions on any of that as well.
All right, I have a comment. Not too concerned about your space and where you're at now. I was a sheriff over 20 years ago, and I think where you were at before they moved the sheriff's office there, at the jail, was actually better accommodations than you have now. Another thing that concerns me is your storage space for evidence. You're using some old boxcars, I believe is what it is, storage, and that's not adequate to store evidence. With evidence, as we all know, there's a chain of custody issue, and that's very important. It's separate from your building, and there's no cameras or anything like that to ensure that evidence is secured. So I agree that we need to improve your situation there quite a bit. Your offices are small. You can actually people talking in the next room, and that's not right for a sheriff's department. So we'll be glad to go ahead and I'll be glad to make this a priority on my list to improve your situation there. As far as the cameras, that was an unfunded mandate, of course, that was passed along by our governor, and it's a good one, I believe. But like I said, it's unfunded. So hopefully this year they'll correct that, and I think they intend to. So hopefully they'll do that. Any other comments from Commissioner Varela, Commissioner Trujillo?
Commissioner Nahad, Sheriff.
Commissioner Trujillo.
Sheriff Lopez, I've also been in the sheriff's office, and it is just a tight area, and as Commissioner Nahad has stated, there has to be some kind of privacy and soundproof rooms and things like that. If you can hear a conversation going on in the next office, that's no way to conduct a law enforcement office. There's really, I'd be happy to put that at, as one of our priorities as well. So I just wanted to state that.
Chairman?
Commissioner Varela.
Sheriff, I'd like to thank you so much for the great work you do and your presence out in our part of the county, and that goes with all the visitors we have. And I know we all do the best with what we have, and it's a struggle and it's a challenge, and I support your requests as well. And you do a great job with what you have with the limited staff and resources, and I just wanted to thank you and commend you for that. And your staff, thank you.
Sheriff Lopez, anything else you want to add?
That's about it, Commissioner. I appreciate the opportunity to present to you.
Thank you, Sheriff. Next up, I believe we have Mr. Garcia, Public Works Director. Do you have anything to propose?
Good morning, Commissioner Chair and Commission. As you can see on the ICIP list, and it's listed as number one. I appreciate that Mr. Lopez has put together some of the heavy equipment for, we are in need. I mean, yeah, I guess in my view, I think we should have county-owned equipment, heavy equipment. It is a need currently. We are out on leases, and we're moving forward in some of our budget for some of those heavy equipment, but I really see a need to try to acquire and county-owned equipment. I think Mr. Lopez has done a great job in putting over the last few years the needs for some of that, and I think the needs for that, utilizing a lot of that equipment for our county roads, which is also part of your request as commissioners for your roads. I think that's a big need. You know, after hearing everybody today, I see a lot of needs in the county, and you have, I guess, the responsibility of trying to figure out what's our most important. I really hear the sheriffs though, safety for our public, you know, and having those vehicles for them and first responders, especially in this time. You know, I really hear all the needs of everybody, but I appreciate everything that the commission does for the county and looking at all the needs and in public works. I hear Geraldine Gutierrez and I see where her machines are at. And I go in that building and it is dusty. It is dusty. I think some of our facilities need to really be updated and some of them are very inadequate for some of the things that take place for some of that. But full consideration for the public works heavy equipment, and then just keep going and trying to get some of our roads fixed. A lot of our roads, some of the roads that we do have that are asphalt, really need attention, and so we don't lose them. Some of them are in dire need, and we're completing a lot of projects right now. But some of the funding is going away. You know, as you all know, the governor pulled a lot of funding for next year for our road projects, and we're only going to have 2 or 3 next year, as opposed to we had like a dozen this summer. So I'd like to see how we can still continue to maintain our asphalt roads and try to get some of that heavy equipment for the county. I appreciate your consideration for that. Thank you. Do you have any questions?
For Mr. Garcia, Commissioner Barrera.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Garcia and Mr. Lopez, for continuing to do your great work on our roads. And I know there's a tremendous need, and there again, we won't be counting with what we have. I have a question for you, Mr. Lopez. That railing in East Pecos on the Sequia, is that on this list? Do we need to identify it, or is it what number identified here?
Yes, if you notice, it's further on the list, and it's also included within the packets of the 5 districts, but it is in there.
Okay, I know there's all these specific things, and I don't want to go into everything, but you did mention public safety, and this is our priority, especially, it's always been our priority, but that low water crossing in East Pecos, we've been looking at it. There's a design that's partly done already, and the plan is to have a meeting in Pecos with the community. And that's really great, because when we do get rains, we haven't had our rain this year. We had one right after the afternoon when you left, and we looked at it.
Right.
That was, you know, people can't cross. It's a public safety issue, and it's very important. A lot of people live on that end of East Pecos. So looking at that, and also just to remind you that to meet with Mr. Robert Baca from the East Pecos Mutual Domestic Water Users Association. They're working on the sewer line that'll be parallel with this, and we talked some time back, and maybe we could combine resources. It would be terrible to do this project and then have them do their sewer project and tear it up. So it's real important to coordinate that, and I'm really happy to see that on the list, and hopefully we can get some funding for it. And in the meantime, you were going to address it with some filling in rocks and so on. So anyway, I just wanted to make that comment about coordinating with East Pecos Water and Sewer Association, and thank you for the work that you're doing, and it's great, and hopefully there'll be more money coming in and not taken away. That's a challenging time for all of us and for the roads, so thank you.
Vice Chair Nahad and Commission, can I add a little bit more to what Gerald said, please?
Mr. Lopez.
Okay, so, but thank you for this opportunity to present our needs at Public Works, and we have great needs, you know, like, I'm gonna echo some of the stuff that Mr. Garcia just stated and mention some of the other things that are there, but our needs are huge. We have needs in solid waste. We have bins that have, you know, long lived their lifespan. We're repairing them almost daily, weekly for sure. We do a lot of welding to them. There's a lot of repairs going on with those solid waste bins, and it's time to purchase bins, and each bin is somewhere around the neighborhood about $7,000-8,000 for the heavy duty bins that I would like to purchase. And you know, we're talking, you know, possibly like 15 bins just in so we could operate our solid waste efficiently. You know, there's holes and you know, in other times that we've requested, we had pictures, and there's still the same bins in operation, and like we struggle to keep them alive. But you know, that's just one need. You know, we got to get to our roads. We're committed to providing, you know, safe travel. We got emergency response. We got school buses, fire, police. We got, you know, many emergency vehicles that are traveling our county roads, and we're committed to providing that safe travel. So what we've come up with in each district is priority is paved roads in every district. You know, we do have dirt roads, base course roads that we feel that we can provide materials and improvements to these roads with our resources that we have. But in order to provide that, we got to have equipment to get there. We need trucks, you know, we need equipment to produce the materials. And that's why we have that, you know, that priority there. And thank you. It's number one right now. I'd like to see it remain there. Of course, I'm being greedy, but so we do need that equipment to be able to provide these services, no? Without that equipment, trucks and whatnot, we're not going to be able to get there to provide that. But that being said, you know, in every district, we came up with a list of paved roads that are in dire need of some type of surface treatment, whether it be chip seals or overlays or whatever it is. And pavement treatments are expensive. They're hard to fund. So without this, these monies, you know, from capital outlay, it makes it impossible out of general budget to be able to provide these much needed improvements to these roads. So we're really dependent on this. And as you all know that with all our constituents, roads seems to be one of the most important things, you know, to our constituents and public. You know, we want to be able to provide that, to preserve these roads. They're at a point, some of them are getting close to total deterioration, and we're not going to be able to salvage them, and then it'll require a total reconstruction. You know, but most of them right now at this point with the surface treatment, whether it's a double pen chip seal or something more minor, you know, a good pothole repair first and double pen chip seal would definitely prolong the life of these roads and extend them maybe possibly up to 10 years, you know, 7 to 10 years before we have to do another treatment. But it's required. It's something that you can't just neglect and, you know, let it continue like that. So we do have in every district has paved roads. District 3 is the district that has the most paved roads. That's why if you notice in that district, there's a little bit more money there, you know, and these are monies we are being conservative. I mean, you know, we could have requested a lot more, but we want to be reasonable, no? So we do get funded. I mean, you know, we could have requested 10 million in each one of these districts, and that would definitely take care of them. But realistically, are we going to be funded that way? Probably not. So let's stay realistic, and we came up with a list of roads and, you know, a certain amount in each road that would provide a good improvement, you know, a good treatment for that road, and then phase them out, you know, just because possibly one road, San Isidro, you know, we have whatever it is, 300,000, probably won't take care of the whole road. But next year, if we get funded, we'll keep it on the ICIP and do the remainder of it. But, we have them listed just in numerical order, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I had talked to Mr. Archuleta, and I had recommended, in fairness to all the districts, is to draw for priority in our ICIP list. I don't know how y'all feel about that, but instead of having them 1 through 5, which doesn't make it fair for number 5 to be the last one, is I thought, put numbers in a hat and draw the priorities if that's something that you would consider, or if you're
I have
happy
a
leaving
question.
it that way.
Commissioner Varela?
Yes, thank you, Chairman Nahad, and thank you, both of you for doing this, and thank you, Mr. Archuleta, for preparing such a thorough list for us to go over. Okay, and I see we have each one by district, and last year we lumped them all together, we didn't get funding, but is there a strategy as to why you separated them, or should we, because it's taking up 1, 2, 3, 4, the top 5 of the 6 top priorities, and would it be better to have us lumped together for paved roads and just be one, number 2 priority, or whatever priority we pick, and then divide it if we get any money when it comes in, how we had intended last year to divide it by district, if we get a lump sum for the whole county for paved roads, and then divide it by district. I hope that we could do that like equally, even though we have a different number of paved roads and the different mileage of county roads, but if we could do that, I'm just wondering, I'm sure that you talked about that?
So if you see item number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, it's still there. It still exists as a lump sum. And it's listed right there under road and drainage improvements to various county roads.
See that one?
Yeah, so that still remains.
It's a separate one.
Yes.
So the paved, last year, didn't do the paved roads all together? Did we do it like this?
Yeah, it was all together, and we did have additional roads. It was both.
Okay.
Kind of similar to what it still is. If you notice, we removed some roads, and the reason why they were removed, for example, La Tewa, that was removed because we're currently working on that low water crossing, and we took care of the pavement as well. So there's no point in having it in the ICIP list anymore as a priority. So that was removed. A19A was base course. We have all of A19A covered in base course, and we continue to apply as needed. County Road A18A also, same way. We've done many improvements there. No longer needs to be on the list. And over in Garita, there was a low water crossing too that shouldn't, in my opinion, and that's why I removed it, didn't hold a lot of priority. We've done and put in some rock and kind of strengthened that low water crossing, and it's not a big issue anymore, not a priority. Low population. So all these roads, there was 12 roads that we removed from the list that was, currently from years past. And they're mostly roads that have already been improved. So that's the reason why they were removed. But, we still left some individually listed, and then also as a lump sum is listed also, as you saw there in number 7 or 8, whatever it was. And then in each district, we have a list of, roads that are within that one number there. It's all packaged together, and they're all paved roads is what we're really concentrating on. And like I've been talking to commission for quite some time, is that needs to be our priority. That's the hardest ones to fund, and we do need to rely on some kind of outsource source.
So thank you so is there a reason that we separated them instead of putting them in one lump block for paved roads?
Mr. Vice Chair, Commissioner Varela, yes. Arnold and I met, and we just separated the paved roads from the roads that they can address within Public Works
But
on
as
their
far
own.
as like combining districts and separating them by district, was there
Well, we separate them by commission district because there's different paved roads within those districts. So that's kind of how we did it.
Comments, questions?
I think if we were to receive funding, I think the thought is if it was, we received funding for, so let's just say that we received it for item 2, which is District 1, and it was in the amount of $2,000, then we'd go to the commissioner of that district and see, if he or she wanted to have some input. and decide which road would hold priority in his or her district, and then at that point determine where it's going to be applied to. Priority wise, in my opinion, every single district holds priority, and for different reasons, whether it's, population, road condition, whatever it is. But, if I was asked today, what road has priority, in my opinion, they all have priority. And every district is unique, and every situation is different, and they all have priority. We owe it to every single constituent, whether it's 10 people or 50. But they're in there, with generosity. Hopefully we get some funding and we could provide some much needed improvement.
Thank you.
Commissioner Hart. and
Commissioner
Lopez.
Trujillo.
So your thought of having like all the roads in each district by number, and each of us fill out a road as a priority, I get that, and I don't think that's a bad idea. That way, we all kind of have a chance at getting one of our projects done instead of, just throwing it all out there and maybe only getting enough to do half of a project, which has been happening a lot. I mean, we only get 25,000 for a project that's gonna cost 150,000. And so we have to either do extensions or do whatever until we have enough money to actually do the project. So I guess my question would be, like, depending on the amount of money we get, will we then throw our priority list in a hat again and say it doesn't help to get 25,000 for a road that needs 150,000. And we get 150,000 for all our projects. Should we then put our priorities in a hat again and choose one that we can finish? Because it's like almost senseless to have all of these projects partially funded. We'll never get to them. It'll take us the rest of our lives to get to any of them, or to accumulate enough funding to complete those projects. I'd almost say, let's get a project in Commissioner Varela's district done, complete it, done. Next round, let's do it in Commissioner Garcia's. Next round, do it in Commissioner Hudson, and so on. So that we can actually see real progress and actually get these projects completed. Can we do that, or is the money earmarked for certain projects?
Commissioner Trujillo, I had that same thought, a couple of years ago, and I don't know if some of you might remember, I always thought a rotation would be, something to consider. And like you said, fund a project in one district and so forth and so on. But what we've seen from, senators, representatives, they get the money that they're going to get to distribute, no? So pretty much that senator's going to put it to where he wants, or she, whoever it is, and they're gonna apply it to the road that they want. And then Mr. Archuleta could probably answer the question as to, it's got to be spent, I believe, on that particular road, unless I don't know otherwise. But it's allocated for that particular road, so it would have to be spent on that road, right?
Mr. Vice Chair, Commissioner Trujillo. So typically what happens is that funding is tied to the capital outlay request. So the language on the request, which for example would say to plan, design, and construct a pavement on County Road 84A, if it's awarded through the capital outlay bill, then it has to go specifically to that road. So it really has to be more of a proactive approach to decide which project would go for a request. And then on top of that, every commissioner and public official has the right and their ability to go advocate for their districts as well. So it can be a little bit gray, if you will, but usually it's tied to the capital outlay request.
Commissioner Varela.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Archuleta. And that is an issue, Mr. Trujillo, Commissioner Trujillo, and I worked for the Acequias and did dozens of ICIPs over several years, 12 years. And that's always the issue with the legislature. It's like, can you complete, and that's on the capital outlay questionnaire, can you complete this entire project with this funds or a portion of it? That's why planning phase and design, and then even phasing the construction is very important, because you're never going to get all the money that we're asking for. And the legislature is not, they're not wanting to fund partial projects. They want to know if something's going to be complete, or at least a phase of it will be complete. So that's really important. That's why it's phased that way, because it's rarely, I shouldn't say never, but it's rarely the full amount that's asked for. Another thing about capital outlay is when you look at this language here, it says state grant funding should be requested when all other funding sources have been exhausted if entity is providing in them. Anyway, so they're encouraging us to seek other revenues, and we know that in the state of New Mexico, and we're dependent on capital outlay, there's not a lot of other revenue. And ideally, it'd be great if we could develop renewable energy in this community, county, to have some other things. There's a meat processing plant that might be coming in. So develop other sources of revenue so we can develop our infrastructure in this county, because capital outlay, and I know it's another discussion for another time, but since we're talking about ICIPs and funding, it's been less and less, and now with COVID and other entities going after the money, it's competitive, even amongst ourselves, even within our own district. Which road am I going to pick? It's set up that it's very competitive, and it makes it difficult. And then people, when you get a little bit of a road project done, instead of saying thank you, I get 10 calls. Why did you stop there? What about my drive? What about me, Lupe? What about my driveway? Then I'm calling Arnold, and we had 10 calls on no good deed goes unpunished, you know? So it's a bigger challenge, but right now we're doing what we can, but I just wanted to add to that. Thank you. Thank you.
Commissioner Trujillo too, and when I made the comment of drawing, it was basically to draw the numbers right now that's on the ICIP list. I'm not sure if you're clear where I went with that, and just to, and I don't know how the other commissioners feel of them being like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or if you would like them, drawn and be fair to every commission district to draw, and that would, or whatever you draw, if we draw the first number and it's number 3, well, that'd be the first priority, and then so forth. But Commissioner Garcia made a comment earlier about designing projects and having them basically shovel ready, that they call is and Robert and I, Mr. Archuleta, discussed that the other day, that they like to see projects that are shovel ready, correct, Mr. Archuleta? And
that's correct.
And we're kind of in a hard situation, because it would be nice to do that, but if you're talking a $300,000-$400,000 project, you're talking 7% to 11%.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to correct that. That was not what I said.
Oh, I misunderstood, sorry.
What I stated is, for example, the sheriff, he gave us a proposal here for the building. It's a conceptual proposal, but it's conceptual enough that we know that it's going to be worth about $180,000. If we, for example, our clerk wants storage. There's people out there that are professionals enough that they could sit down with our clerk for an hour, and she could tell them exactly what she told us. She wants X amount of square, or what they'll do is they'll ask her, how many machines do you have? And she'll tell them how many machines she has. How many machines are you thinking of having in 2 years? So they'll take into account all of that. And then based on that, they're professional enough that they could say, well, we need so much space per machine. So right now we're thinking 5,000 hypothetically square feet. That person can come back and say, well, you know what? 5,000 square feet is not enough. So we're going to go with 7,500 square feet. By the time it's all done, they come up with a conceptual layout, a conceptual plan enough for us to go to the legislature. And that kind of service is minimal. you know, the fee for that kind of service is minimal. They can sit down with, like I say, with, and please forgive me, Geraldine, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I'm, you know, using your project as an example. The conceptual is gonna be enough that they're gonna have a rendering similar to what the sheriff has right here. It's gonna be a rendering similar to this, and we get that packet, and with that rendering, there's gonna be an attachment, and it's gonna say, it's gonna cost X amount of dollars. You know, preliminarily, and they use they use formulas that from projects that they're working on every day. They have projects they're working on in Albuquerque, projects in Torres, projects in Las Vegas. These professionals do, and they use all those numbers and they attach it to one project. You know, so it's a conceptual, and we're not spending hundreds of thousands of dollars. For example, the sheriff, and I worked with the sheriff, we talked to Kevin Balsar. Kevin Balsar can give a complete proposal ready to go to the legislature for $7,500. You know, it would be worth every bit of those $7,500 for the county to spend that money on an addition for the sheriff's office if it means us getting $250,000 in return. The same thing with roads. We used to do that all the time. For 16 years that I worked in the county, I would call the engineer and say, you know what, can you go and give me a conceptual of, for example, Los Vigiles. So the engineer would go out there and analyze it, and within 2 or 3 hours, after he analyzed it, he'd come back and say, well, you know what, it's gonna cost you X amount of dollars. And they do that based also on history that they have from construction projects that they're working on. You know, like they know what it costs to pave a road here in Las Vegas. They know how much it costs to do drainage here in Las Vegas because they have record of it. And so it's not gonna be something that's gonna cost us thousands of dollars to do. Our investment now for the legislature in January, I'm estimating that our investment will probably not exceed $25,000. That's just that's my hypothetic without putting a pen to the paper for anything that we're requesting. If Commissioner Varela wants the East Pecos crossing, you know, send Berlin out there, have Berlin take a look at it. He can come back and tell her, Commissioner Varela, your project is gonna cost you $225,000. And here it is, look, it's gonna cost you to do this, including plan and design, like Mr. Archuleta is touching on. So, you know, the same thing with Ms. Gallegos, the assessor. She's got that professional guy, Brian Garcia, he said, or whatever his name is. You know, he could probably give her a conceptual proposal of what it would cost to do something like what Ms. Gallegos wants to do for San Miguel County. That's what I want us to do from now to January. I want us to come up with a binder that we're gonna take to the legislature that has a conceptual of everything that we're requesting for. And my guess, like I say, my guess, and you can quote me on it if you want. My guess, it probably will not exceed $25,000 cost to the county. That's just, you know, so I stand corrected on that.
Commissioner Garcia, thank you for the clarification and apologize for the misunderstanding. And I see where you're going. Yeah, we can, and we do contact engineers and we get a summary of cost and quantities. And you're right, it's something that can be done. Simply, the discussion that we had that Mr. Archuleta and I had was more in regards to shovel-ready projects, and those apparently rank a little bit higher, right, Mr. Archuleta, if they are shelf-ready, basically?
Mr. Chair, Arnold, yes, I think right now the ICIP, again, as I mentioned earlier in the beginning of the meeting, is a working document and it can be changed based on priority. Obviously, Mr. Lopez is advocating for Public Works heavy equipment as the #1 project. So whatever the pleasure of the commission is, that's how we will rank the ICIP. And again, it's important that as long as it's on the ICIP, you can do a legislative request. So anyone in this room who has an interest in doing a legislative request or adding one on later on. It's not a problem to get it on the ICIP later on, as long as we meet the deadline. But as long as it's on here now, it can easily transition into a legislative request. And really the hardest part is just getting the legislative sponsor to sign it.
Thank you.
All right. Commissioner Varela.
Okay, I have a suggestion, and thank you for that clarification, because as long as it's on the ICIP, and I'm not gonna fight over, I want mine to be the number 1 or number 2 for the roads, because the roads are gonna be there forever. So it's not a form of a motion yet, but from what I've heard and seen today, I would like to, and I didn't know hear from our manager on the
He'll be next.
item 7, public facility or the firefighter equipment and tools, but those I imagine because they're related to public safety are important, are priorities. But I would like to see that we prioritize based on what we heard today. The need is the sheriff department addition, the clerk storage, the assessor's data and system, and then the number 1, the public roads, heavy equipment, accessories, and then other safety is in that order. That would just be my preference. And everything else with the roads, they can be on the list, and not gonna worry or fight over that my road is picked at the top of the list, or that the order doesn't bother me that we went by 1 to 5. I'm Varela, so I'm in alphabetical order, I'm always at the end. So I'm glad I'm not in District 5, because I'm in 2, so I'm okay. But anyway, those are just some comments and thoughts I want to share before we decide.
Before we go there, I want to hear from Dr. Martinez also. We don't have detention present, fire, or emergency management. There might be some needs there that we need to address as well. Dr. Martinez.
Vice Chair Nahad, members of the commission, Mr. Andrew Duran, our fire chief, did meet with the fire chiefs, and he also sent an email. And I know that is number 12 on the ranking list, and we have a total of $450,000 requesting firefighter equipment and tools. And so what has occurred in the past, you have specific fire departments that will meet with the representatives and coordinate through Mr. Andrew Duran on the specifics. But we felt that it should be just one item that can include everything. We didn't want to list any specifics, because in the past we ran into problems. Let's say, for example, if we're requesting $450,000 for a fire truck and then we only get $200,000, then we're scrambling trying to find the rest of the money. So that would be number 12, firefighter equipment and tools. The other one is the public safety facility, and that's ranked number 7. But we don't believe right now, because of our economic situation, that we will be able to obtain the $3.5 million from the legislature. So what we're looking at is hopefully next year, if things turn out to be okay, then we can submit that as one of our top requirements. But like Mr. Garcia mentioned earlier on the conceptual design, we do have that for the public safety facility, and we need to do that also for the clerk's office and so forth. We need to have those conceptual designs so that we can move forward with those projects. I think those are the only 2 items. I did meet with the warden, and he does have money, capital outlay that he needs to spend. And so number 11 is he's requesting $516,000 for detention center renovation.
Thank you.
But Vice Chair, that's all I have.
Okay. So, but what I'm hearing is, as far as Mrs. Gutierrez is concerned, that we might have the funding already to complete that facility. Is that correct, Dr. Martinez? Including the study?
What I mentioned is I agree with Mr. Garcia that we need to have a conceptual design of the facility. We need to have an architect meet with Mr. Archuleta and Ms. Gutierrez so that we can put that design together. So when we present to the legislature, we can say, this is what we need. This is what we want. So I agree, we need to have that conceptual design ready to go.
I agree with that as well. But what I'm asking is, even with the study, conceptual study, we do not have the money in the budget to complete that, say if it was under 200,000?
I would have to check with Melinda, but I don't believe that we could.
Because I think that would be a priority.
Vice Chair, I will definitely meet with Melinda to see if that's the possibility to complete a facility or renovate a facility for about 200,000.
All right, having said that, anybody else? We've got everybody? Everybody's concerns there? Commissioner Garcia?
I know that Commissioner Medina isn't not here yet, but if you're okay with it, I'd like to.
Absolutely, I'd like to hear from Commissioner Medina.
I'd like to yield the floor to Mr. Medina.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. I really appreciate it, Mr. Garcia. Thank you. First of all, I want to thank you for listening to our elected officials here, Geraldine, Bertha, and Connie. You know, that's something that's really a priority. I know the commission looks over the budget, but they know how they need it spent, and especially like I talked to Mr. Nahad, and I want to get together with him and see what his priorities are for our roads or any projects that he has going. And this thing that Harold requested for this meeting, and I think it's something good of sort of a master plan for the county. And I think that's something that should continue within the years. So when you go to Santa Fe, you have your ducks in line, you have a plan of action. I think it's something good to work with. I want to be a team player. Like you said, if you want to get a project done, if we need help from one another, let's do it. Let's not do it in the phase. Let's do it. Let's complete it. Like Commissioner Trujillo was saying, let's finish some projects and help each other. That's what we think, the way things are going to get done. But I thank you for this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Medina. All right, moving on to the priority list. How many do we want to list?
Mr. Chairman, I have, for my district, I have 3 projects that I like listed.
Okay, Commissioner Varela.
I'm sorry.
How many total should we list on the priority list?
Well, the ICIP, you have 5 priorities, that's a
Okay.
process, and then everything else is just on the list. So my suggestion was going to be to shift the priorities, move the roads down, maybe leave number 1, public roads, public safety, that's next year, I'm sorry. And then I would like to move up the clerk storage facility up on the list, the assessor data and Pictometry system, and the sheriff's admin building. So that would be my suggestion, to move those up into the top 5 priorities and move our roads
Excuse me,
down.
number 1 you listed with roads?
Well, it doesn't have to be there, because roads are always there, it's a constant. But I would think that should be one of the top 5. So I would say that we have the clerk's office, the sheriff's edition, the assessors, and then the roads. Let me see, there was something else with public safety. I think the sheriff's office. Anyway, so that's my suggestion, that we shift those up to the top from, is in order, the top 5. The rest will stay on the ICIP. And with my roads, I think they're already on there. I got them addressed, so I'm not going to worry about those or what order they're in. They're on the list, and even for my district. But I would make a motion that we reshift the priorities in the top 5 to include the clerk's need for their machine, the sheriff's office for their expansion, and the assessor's needs. And then the public, the roads, what is that one? Public works, heavy equipment, and assessors. So is that 5? Yeah, that would be 5. So those would be my
Okay,
top.
I have clerk, sheriff, assessors, roads, and what else?
It was the heavy equipment.
Heavy equipment?
The one that's number 1 now. So that would be maybe number 5. I would put the clerk, I can make it a form of a motion unless we want to have discussion. I would make a
Okay.
recommendation.
What would be your priorities, Commissioner Trujillo? And then I'll go to yours and.
But are we talking ICIP or are we talking legislative? Because Commissioner Varela is talking ICIP. I have 3 requests for the legislative.
Okay, no, we're talking ICIP right now, and
Yeah,
then
we're
we'll move
talking
on to the.
ICIP.
Mr. Vice Chair, Commissioners, can I just go over the list that I heard based on everyone's discussion, just so we're clear? So I have projects 1 through 12. So Public Works equipment, and then Commissioner Districts 1 through 5. Then Country Acres, solid waste containers, the county clerks, the sheriff, the assessor, the sheriff's addition, and then the road and drainage improvements, and then the firefighter tools. Is that a good way to rank the first top 13?
No. Sorry, but no, that's not my understanding.
Well, at least in kind of in the general area.
For me, no.
Commissioner Garcia, your priority list for ICIP.
Well, for ICIP, I agree with Commissioner Varela. I think that, we need to acknowledge the elected officials' request.
Okay.
We need to represent their interest when we're out there, and I'm committed to represent their interest. And so I agree with Commissioner Varela on that. I do want to make sure that we have roads in there by all means, because we get hit for roads every day. And so I want that to be on there. Of course, I'm being a little biased to Country Acres. And the only reason I'm being biased to it is because that's already been prioritized as far as seeking funds through community development block grant for that. And so I'd like to have that one on the top 10. It could be even a 10th project, it doesn't matter. But as far as, I know that Public Works has requests for equipment, and it's an ongoing thing every day. And so I agree, it's better that we get funds through capital outlay rather than us having to use from our general fund, so I agree with that. And so I'll agree with Commissioner Varela, as long as, like I say, we take into consideration roads by all means as one of the top 10, and of course Country Acres, even though that's in my district, and we've already prioritized that through a previous request.
Commissioner Trujillo, your top 5.
Okay.
ICIP.
Yes, for the ICIP, Commissioner Nahad. So I think I'm good with the Public Works heavy equipment request. Also, I am good with the assessors, the clerks, the sheriff's office. So that's 4. And I think 5 should be roads.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Varela.
I'm ready to make a motion regarding the top 5 priorities on the ICIP.
Okay.
And I would recommend we move clerk to 1, sheriff to 2, assessors to 3.
I'm sorry, let me start again, Commissioner,
I'm
so I
sorry.
can get them right.
Okay,
1,
the number 1 priority, I believe, should be the clerk's storage facility. Number 2, the sheriff's department building addition. Number 3, the assessor's data. And number 4 would be the Public Works heavy equipment and accessories. And number 5 being the combined road drainage improvements to various county roads. And then everything else could just be moved down on the list as it is.
okay.
Or up.
Let me just make sure. Okay, roads. Okay, motion made by Commissioner Varela to approve these as the top 5 ICIP priorities. Number 1, clerk. Number 2, sheriff's office. Number 1, clerk's building, storage facility. Number 2, sheriff's office building. Number 3, assessor's equipment. Number 4, public works equipment. And number 5, road. Do I have a second on that?
So moved.
Second by Commissioner Garcia. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Commissioner Varela.
I'd like to add to before we end the discussion on the ICIP,
Okay.
I'd like to also make sure that we leave Country Acres in there on the top 10.
Country Acres would be number 6,
Not necessarily, it could be 10.
but as we go down.
And then I'd also like to, the sheriff had 2 requests. One was for the bell cameras, and that's an unfunded mandate, so we need to make sure that we have that in there.
Number 6.
I've got Country Acres number 6, lapel cameras number 7. Suggestions on number 8.
I have a suggestion on number 8. Even though we received $500,000 for communications, I don't feel that $500,000 is enough, because I've had the opportunity to be a part of it a long time ago when we got funds for the communication system. I think $500,000 is just gonna be a drop in the bucket for us to be able to have communications throughout San Miguel County. And, the sheriff is here, the sheriff could probably touch a little bit on that, because I'm by no means an expert in it. But communications is very vital throughout the county. Commissioner Trujillo had a presentation a couple of months ago for the schools are having issues with communication as well. The public safety has an issue with communication. So I'd like to have that one in there somewhere.
Moved up in 10.
Okay, that was, I've got that at number 8. Okay, no, any concerns, objections? Okay.
No, Chairman Nahat?
Commissioner Varela.
Can we follow that with number 44, Sheriff Emergency Department Emergency Vehicles? And then also along emergency vehicles, number 12, the firefighting equipment and tools? Move that in there too, in the top 10?
Okay, number 10 would be emergency vehicles.
I lost track of the
Number
numbers.
9 would be sheriff's emergency vehicles. Number 10 would be
Firefighting.
firefighter, okay.
And that's our top 10, I think we're.
Is, on firefighting is 450,000 and off, Mr. Manager?
Vice Chair Nahad, members of the commission, thank you, Mr. Garcia, and I'll double check on that. I'll meet with Andrew, and if we need to increase that, I'll have them do that. Thank you.
We'll leave it in there, number 10.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, can I go over the list just so we're all clear? That way I rank it
Okay.
properly.
Want me to repeat that, or will you repeat it?
I'll repeat it and then
Okay,
just
okay.
verify with me. So the number 1, the county clerk. Number 2, the sheriff's addition. Number 3, the pictometry, the assessor's office. Number 4, the public works heavy equipment. Number 5, the road and drainage improvements. Number 6, country acres. Number 7, the lapel cameras. Number 8, communications. Number 9, the sheriff's emergency equipment. And number 10, the firefighters. Is that correct?
What I've got.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other issue? Any other concerns? Any other business we need to take care of?
Prioritize our legislative agenda.
Okay, go-
Well-
proceed with, oh, okay.
This kind of follows, I don't know, I'm sorry, can we have discussion on that, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Garcia?
Yes, Commissioner Varela.
I'm sorry, the ICIP is a plan to prepare us for the legislature requests. And I think, that the capital outlay requests will follow this and we'll have our packages. I think we have a lot of time to do that. I think they should maybe follow with the sequence that we have here, then we can all go and develop the ICIPs the capital outlay requests for our district and go lobby for them. But I do want to say that I think it would be better for us as a county that we go together instead of competing with each other, like this is my road, because it kind of can get to that. And then we even have constituents that don't even come through us that go with their own road requests for a road, usually it's roads, to their legislature that we don't even know. So anyway, I don't know how much time, what you're planning to do with that, Commissioner Garcia, but
Well,
for the capital outlay, it kind
I-
of follows this sequence.
I have an obligation to the constituents of District 1, and I've got an obligation to San Miguel County. The ICIP addresses my obligation to the residents of San Miguel County, but I have particular roads in District 1 that I want to ask for funds. And so the agenda today was to get a head start on our legislative requests. And I think we need to give staff direction on where we stand within our particular districts so that we can get the staff going, because I don't want to come January, and I'm not kidding you. This past year was a mess at the legislature. We have time now. Let's get it. It's only going to take us an extra 20 minutes. I'll give you 1 minute of request for District 1. And I think that each commissioner should also ask for a request for their district, because we are obligated to our districts. And so my request would be to get funds for Los Vigilas and for Gallinos. I'd like to finish the Gallinos project. And then I'd also like to, building wise, and it's in the ICIP, I would like to get the request for the county fairgrounds. The county fairgrounds is in my district, but the county fairgrounds serves Mora County and San Miguel County. So the county fairgrounds, even though it's in District 1, it's going to benefit the entire county if we get improvements to that facility. So those are my 3 requests, Mr. Chair, for District 1.
That's a good point. It benefits people in the valley to bring their produce, their rabbits, and their the livestock. County Fairgrounds is an important addition. Commissioner Trujillo?
So I'd like to see some of the paved roads in my district addressed. Chico, Harris, they're in bad need of repair. And at the very least, get them repaired. You know, chip seal would be nice. Some kind of restorative work to them, that would be really nice.
Harris Road?
Harris.
Okay, what else?
Chico.
Chico?
Is it a county road in Pandaray?
848.
848. I'd like to prioritize that. And I know we have funding for that. We have some funding for that.
Yes, that project started yesterday, actually, for that small portion.
Okay,
No.
So that'd be utilized, there was two fund sources for it.
okay.
They're combined and they're being utilized for that improvement. So you'd like to see continued work on that road?
Continue, yeah, just to complete the project. We've kind of been putting a Band-Aid on it every year, so it'd be nice to see that completed. I think that's it for me.
Commissioner Varela, your request?
Yes, thank you, and thank you to Chairman Garcia for getting us a head start on this, but I just want to also make a point that this is not the end of this, and we'll be adding more. So for my capital outlay request, I'd like to prepare one for the San Isidro CRB 43 chip seal, East Pecos low water crossing. The railing on East Pecos, I think is just in there with other road repairs. And emergency vehicles, including.
I'm sorry, after the East Pecos water crossing, Commissioner Varela? Railing, you said?
Yes, a railing, and I don't know the number of that road. Is it on here, Arnold, or is it just under that railing, the Sequia?
It's included in the East Pecos drainage and stuff.
Okay, and also purchase of emergency vehicles and possibly to complete the purchase for an ambulance for my district, depending on what we find out in our next meeting. And that's it for now, and then we'll be adding more as we get closer to the session. Thank you.
And my concerns would be the Allende Road. And the section of road south of, west of C-23 that connects to South Grand. There's a section there that needs to be completed. You know which one it is, okay?
That's on the S-curve.
Okay.
Part of that belongs to the city, so
Yeah.
from the boundary over.
But the section from the county that connects from the trailer park there on South Grand to the portion that we just finished paving on C-23.
DOT right away.
Okay. Any other concerns, anything, Commissioner? Dr. Martinez?
Vice Chair Nahad, members of the commission, just a couple of questions for clarification. Is this list that you all just shared with us, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, are those our legislative priorities?
Yes.
And how do you want to direct staff and myself to handle this? And what would be, is it because I know we still are missing Maria Martinez.
Yeah.
So I'm estimating we'll probably have maybe 16 legislative priorities. Do you want us, how do you want us to deal with this?
It's a wish list. I know that we'll, prior to anything, we'll meet with our designees and with our legislators and express this with them. I'm sure we can have them, we'll meet with them before this, no? And you have Senator Stefanik, we have Senator Campos and our representatives here, whoever. We still have an election in November, so we still have a couple, I think one position that's up, Mr. Castellanos, and got opposition. Senator Campos has opposition. So we'll have, after November, we'll know more who's going to be representing us. I have a pretty good idea, but we need to be sure. All right.
Mr. Chair, can I just add one thing
Yes.
to Dr.
Commissioner Varela.
Dr. Martinez? On the ICIP, it will not only have 10 plans, we prioritize. The top 5 is what you need to focus on as far as more paperwork for the ICIP process. And then the other 10, that they'll still be on the ICIP, and I don't think we're only going to have 10 or 11. We'll still have all the other projects listed here, but I know it's a little confusing because we picked other projects to do capital outlay, to prepare capital outlay requests for that weren't in the top 10 priority. So that's where I can see that that's a little bit of the confusion. So in the top 5 or maybe the top 10, we'll need capital outlay requests in the county to help us prepare those. And then the other ones that we identified as our projects that aren't in the top 10, for example, my East Pecos water crossing isn't in the top 10 or 11, but it's one. Same with Commissioner Garcia, he chose a couple that aren't in the top 10, but we'd like capital outlay requests for those. That's ideally for everything that's on here. So we kind of did 2 priorities, one in the top 10, and then other requests for capital outlay to start that process. But really, if we could do capital outlays on all of these, that would be great, but we just kind of picked 2 tracks, so I know it's a little confusing. But any help we can get from you, manager, and the staff to support these and get packages ready. So we'll be meeting with our legislators before January, hopefully. Then in January, go to the legislature. We have nice packages with pictures and the designs, and this is what we're asking money for, and that really helps our case, if there's money. But anyway, it's good to have a plan. Even if there's not money this session, planning is really important because eventually there will be some, and then like I said, and with our situation in the county, if we develop our own through the meatpacking plan or a plant or renewable energy or other things that we could bring into the county to increase our revenue, have money, so we could also apply towards these things and not just only capital outlay, but that's a long plan and what we're hoping to do. So if that helps.
Vice Chair Nahad, members of the commission, but it's my understanding that once the November election is complete, then the commission will decide the top 5 legislative priorities. Is that correct? Or the top 10? No?
I don't think so. No, I think
No,
we
no,
did that
no,
now.
the 5 priorities are already set.
Legislative priorities.
Priorities, and those are the ones that we will sell, the ICIP, I'm sorry. The legislative priorities, those will remain priorities, so whoever represents us will help us with those.
Actually, the way I'm seeing that, whatever is 1 through 10 on the ICIP, that's our legislative request. And then we individually have added projects that I particularly want those 3 projects as part of the legislative process. The three I mentioned. And if you look, the way that we prioritize, I think number 5 was various roads. Well, 2 of my projects fall into that category.
That's great.
On the ICIP. And then the county fairgrounds is somewhere there in the ICIP. I saw it. It's not top 10, but it's in the ICIP. And as long as they're in the ICIP, the legislators are okay with that.
Correct.
It's when they're not in the ICIP that they have a big question on. But the top 10 legislative priorities have been identified today.
Vice Chair Nahad, members of the commission, just to clarify what Janice's question is, all the priorities that all of you listed are either in the various road projects description or they're in the paved projects description. Right. So they're embedded in there already within the description.
Within the top 10.
So what I can do for you is as soon as the forms come out on the legislative website, I can prepare preliminarily the requests. And then when you find out who the next contingent of representatives is going to be for our district, then at that time you can take those forms and go get them signed for your legislative sponsor. And in the meantime, I'll make a list of what was discussed today and email it to Dr. Martinez and the commission and the elected officials.
One final comment.
Commissioner Trujillo.
I just want to thank Commissioner Garcia for insisting that this meeting occur. This is going to prepare us for legislature. Commissioner Varela also made a comment that we need to go together to the legislature. That means all of us, electeds, county manager, Mr. Archuleta, that's power. What I've learned about the legislators is if we go as individuals, you're an easy target to push aside. But when you go as a group, as a cohesive group, now you've got their ears. and now you have their attention. So Harold, this meeting means more than we know today. And I think going into legislature, it will show. And if we communicate and we cooperate and we go together as a team, I think we're gonna get more done this year than in prior years, depending on the availability of funds, of course, but even